I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give for this committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you very much.
It's like it should be a scene from The Omen. Do you know in The Omen when he's driving up to the cathedral and he just starts panicking and he's like the Bible to me should have just set on fire, just like
immediately combust as soon as it comes into contact with the very being,
or become pregnant.
It's revealing because not everyone who gives evidence to a select committee has to give that oath.
Oh, really?
For sure. When I interviewed Darren Jones the other day, he was saying, they if they're worried about the
no way.
Yeah, if they're worried about the quality of the testimony that's going to be provided, they can ask them to take an oath so that it's like
that is an unbelievable tidbit.
So they've obviously asked him to swear an oath, which is extraordinary. Because we're talking about a former prime minister, someone who, if you look at our cast of recent prime ministers, then maybe it's not that a pantheon of heroes. But you're talking about a recent prime minister who his colleagues, he's still a serving MP, doubt the veracity of his testimony so strongly that they're asking him to take an oath beforehand. I saw a tweet from the secret barrister that was like, you would expect if in like a criminal defence trial that whoever is in the dock, the defendant, if they're guilty, is going to lie through their teeth to try and get through it. And we kind of have this absurd sight of a man who's being tried for lying through his teeth to try and get through it. And I think as we get into the rest of these clips, you'll see that no matter whether or not he held the Bible, it didn't have much of a bearing on what happened afterwards.
The obligation not to mislead Parliament is a very serious obligation on any member of Parliament, let alone a minister. And it requires the MP or the minister to take due care, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So I have to say, if I was accused of law breaking and I had to give undertakings to the House of Commons, of all places, that I had not broken the law, I would want the advice of a lawyer. I would want the advice of somebody really independent and capable. And you didn't ask the Cabinet Secretary.
Can I interrupt you for 10 seconds?
Yes.
I wasn't accused of law breaking. I was asked to say what had gone on at a party or an event
but if I was asked to give
in the media room on the 18th
the
of
same
December
point of
2020.
If I was asked to give undertakings that rules and guidance had been followed, and there was any doubt about it, there was the most thinnest scintilla of doubt about it, well, you'd want to copper plate your assurances by showing that you'd taken proper advice.
Perhaps
and I put it to you, Mr. Johnson, you did not take proper advice.
Can I respond first by saying that if you look at what I said on December the 1st, you have to. It is true, as Mr. Carter said, that I had expected something like that question to come up, but actually, I thought that the leader of the opposition would not bother with that story for his main line of
that's
questions.
irrelevant.
It is relevant.
The question is, why did you not take proper advice?
Sorry. The answer is quite simply that and I've tried to describe what I felt about these events as they were happening. Nobody raised with me or had any concern before I stood up on December the 1st about those events.
You did not ask.
I asked. I did say this is complete nonsense. I mean, complete nonsense. I asked the relevant people. They were senior people. They'd been working very hard. They gave Jack Doyle gave me a clear account of what had happened.
The Cabinet Secretary.
How the Cabinet Secretary wasn't there? Sorry, you're wrong, because I did ask the Cabinet Secretary. And I did ask the Cabinet Secretary to conduct an inquiry on the 7th of December.
I think Bernard Jenkin, if he hadn't interrupted him when he did, I think you might have got quite a fascinating answer out of him there. I think he was about to say something on the lines of, Keir, I didn't think that the leader of the opposition was going to bring it up because I thought it was a non-story, which is basically an admission of guilt. Because it's like, I think you would have got more out of him.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because actually, I take your point. I think Bernard Jenkin was actually one of the most effective people on that panel of MPs.
Yeah, but there wasn't much to choose from.
I know, I know. I mean, as someone who works in political journalism, when you look at the names of the people on the list, and you go, I don't know who that fucking is.
No.
Bon, the guy from the SNP, Alan Dorrans, Andy Carter.
Most boring man.
A lot of them were pretty boring.
Yeah. I'm not saying that we tuned in because we were wanted to see a blockbuster. I mean, we did. But that's not the reason. But I actually just don't think the line of questioning was that effective. I think they got stuck in this ring of Boris Johnson saying, yes, I did mislead the House, but I followed all of the guidance. And we just kind of kept going on this sort of like infinity loop back and forward. No one quite managed to get in there.
Yeah, they tied him down. His argument was essentially that it was essential for these people to be thanked and for these events to take place. And that, yeah, he didn't knowingly mislead because the guy he'd asked people for advice and whether or not the things that had happened had been inappropriate, and then it transpires, as Bernard Jenkins was questioning him there, that the people that advised him weren't senior civil servants, weren't lawyers. It was the head of comms who was president of the party, and it was interesting to see. Johnson started getting angry during Jenkins questioning him. And I don't know whether that was because they used to kind of find themselves on the same side of the Brexit divide, that during those kind of febrile 2018, 2019 times when Johnson was basically courting the ERG of which Jenkins was a part, maybe there was like a degree of, he was angry that he felt that Jenkins should still be loyal to him. I've been quite impressed with watching Jenkins on the select committees, to be honest with you. I think he's doing a pretty good job.
I don't know if he was getting annoyed at him because of the camaraderie, or the assumed camaraderie. I think that he felt like a man who was beneath him was speaking to him in a way that he didn't appreciate. I think it was quite public school and telling. It was almost like, why is this little man speaking to me? Does he not know who I am?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I wonder whether that reaction from him would have been exaggerated if, instead of Bernard Jenkins, it was a woman doing that to him. Yeah,
well, do you know, this is what I was thinking earlier. I thought he would have actually exploded more under Harriet Harman because he really cannot speak to women. Do you remember when it was... Did Angela Rayner stand in on Prime Minister's questions and he really showed himself up? He kind of became really infuriated and his temperament was just completely out the window.
Dismissive, yeah.
He just does not know how to be told no by a woman, I would argue.
Revealing.
If it was obvious to me that these events were contrary to the guidance and the rules, then it must have been equally obvious to dozens of others, including the most senior officials in the country, all of them, most of them like me, responsible for drawing up the rules, and it must have been obvious to others in the building, including the current Prime Minister. On the contrary, the overwhelming evidence which you have assembled is that these individuals believed that the rules and the guidance were being complied with. And what is so telling is the number of officials who say the same thing and the total silence of the written or electronic record about concerns that anyone wanted to raise with me. It would be one thing if the committee had come here today and said, look, here are the emails or here are the WhatsApps that show that you were warned about rule breaking before you made your statements to the House. You haven't got any such evidence because that never happened. But if you now say instead that it must have been obvious that we were going against the rules and the guidance, then let's be clear about what you are saying. You're not only accusing me of lying, you're accusing all those civil servants, advisors, MPs, of lying about what they believed at the time to be going on. And as far as I know, you're not giving any of them the chance to explain themselves with their own oral evidence. I don't think you seriously mean to accuse those individuals of lying, and I don't think you can seriously mean to accuse me of lying.
I really enjoyed that little cutaway as Harriet Harman tries to keep a smirk from coming across her face. Because as Johnson essentially tries to drag the entire civil service down with him, she can't believe it, and then also perhaps is a little bit amused at his comments directed at her as well.
Yeah. It's fascinating to see him suddenly get concerned about the civil service when, when they've spent, the best part of 2 years denigrating it, calling it full of lefty liberals and all sorts. But, even the people at the party, the garden party that was held, a lot of junior women were, according to Dominic Cummings, told to attend the Bring Your Own Booze event, and then when it all, when it all went on fire, the women were forced to pay the fines. Boris Johnson didn't have to pay one, and they were the ones thrown under the bus.
Yeah.
He had no concern for them at all. Suddenly, they're right in the boat with him.
The extraordinary thing as well, in that same opening statement, Johnson says that Cummings has basically an ulterior motive to lie and that his evidence, should be disregarded. And it's kind of like, I wonder else who has an ulterior motive to lie about what's happening right here.
Yeah.
Could it also possibly be you, Boris?
And he would like that to be in the public perception, that to be Sue Gray. That's what he wanted. She didn't really come up, actually, at all. I thought he was going to lay more blame at her door.
Yeah, I think he tried to, and then Jenkin and Harman in her opening remarks as well, they both said, Jenkins said, ironically, we're not actually using Sue Gray's evidence. I think it was smart of them. I don't know whether they had like an inside track on it, but they did their own evidence collection, which means they weren't reliant on Sue Gray. So obviously what's come out since about her and Keir Starmer and her becoming his chief of staff kind of insulates them from that.
I am confused, though, some of the evidence that was supplied, they had still blurred out, they pixelated people who were in the photos. I actually don't know why that is. Why do they get their privacy protected like that?
Yeah, I mean, and some people who didn't get their privacy protected, I won't say their names, but Johnson actually doxed two of the people that were involved, which he claimed was an accident, but...
After being specifically told, do not do this.
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty obvious what he was doing. It's kind of... it's an implicit threat against anyone else who could potentially give evidence, isn't it? That it's like, I'll just say your name in Parliament, so, deal with it. Bullying.
You were there at the time, so it's a bit hard to understand what the nature of an assurance is when you have been there and seen it with your own eyes. I mean, if I was going at 100 miles an hour and I saw the speedometer saying 100 miles an hour, it would be a bit odd, wouldn't it, if I said, somebody assured me that I wasn't, because it's what you've seen with your own eyes.
Yeah, with great
so
respect.
do you actually think that we would be entitled to be a bit dismayed about the flimsy nature of this assurance when we took it at face value that these assurances amounted to something, and it looks from what you've told us in answer to Mr. Costa's questions that they did not amount to much at all?
Do you find it confusing, this kind of weird weaving, and it just almost feels like kind of like obfuscation, like it just feels like it's intentional? Because I'm watching this and I'm getting really confused in my head. I'm going like, well, what date is what and who was where when, and I mean, some of the conversation about going through the flat and trying to work out if he could see certain gatherings, and I'm just a bit lost.
Yeah, I think it's Rory Stewart who said that that Johnson may be the best liar we've ever seen in British public life, and that he has 100 different ways to lie. And I think that's what you're seeing there. Harman says the point she's making about that 100-mile-an-hour speedometer is like, it doesn't matter whether someone assured you or not that the guidelines were being followed. You saw what was happening. You were there. You saw the people drinking. There's another moment where Johnson says, in relation to sort of what precautions were being taken, we weren't touching the same pens. And it's like, but you were passing drinks around. Yeah. You're pouring out bottles of Prosecco and passing them around the room. So like, how are the two? And it depends what you're talking about, but in that instance, she's saying to him, you saw it with your own eyes, and he's like, well, I wasn't there, but she's not talking about the event that he wasn't there, obviously. Yeah. It's just...
That's the darting around that is really confusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a deliberate tactic to distract, if you're on murky territory, move the conversation or try and move the area of inquisition away to something that you're more confident on.
Well, it worked on me.
I fell for it. Fuck! Fuck!